Okay, so we're still on the rough painting. I'm using a wet brush for this that I designed in the last video. And really, you can just be incredibly aggressive with it. Just kind of picking your shapes. And putting down colors. You want to establish dark shadows. And it's a little bit like wandering through the wilderness, because sometimes you do things you don't like, but I encourage you, instead of hitting Command Z or, God forbid, trying to erase your marks, you just paint it again. You paint over it. And because you're at 70% opacity, all of those little steps and missteps will add to the paint texture. Notice I'm not zoomed in very much, because you're trying to just cover a lot, right, in this stage, so that you have some texture to react to and to build with later on. And obviously there is a lot to painting. There's a lot of study and history about the importance of it, what it means, the different aesthetic approaches. But what we're primarily learning is just how to directly make our own pixels and control our image in that way. And I'm using minimal layers simply so I can see what each is doing. So I have that layer, that's my rough painting so far, and then this layer. And you can still see there's a lot of white there, and I'm trying to get it all filled in. And I'm talking a big game about being bold, but I'm still using a pretty small brush, because I'm just as tentative as anyone else. But sometimes you can just draw with the paint. You know, kind of delineate areas and then just fill them in. Like the strap on her shoulder. And even if I click on the bright white and bring it in, because it's at 70% and it's mixing with the colors underneath, it's not actually going to be bright white. And that's a good thing for painting. You don't want to use pure white, you don't want to use pure black. My darkest dark is a really dark blue. A beginning painting technique is to always mix your blacks. So you don't ever use black paint, you mix like alizarin crimson with phthalo green and get kind of this really, really intensely dark purple. It's always good to have a little bit of color content in your shadows and in your highlights. And instead of using, in traditional painting, using just titanium white for your highlights, you might use something like a Naples yellow, so that you're toning your highlights with a little bit of warmth at the same time as you're putting a little bit of cool color into your shadows. Now, this isn't a painting class, and it's not a color theory class, and it's not a portraiture class, but all of that comes into play. Or it's not an anatomy class if you're doing an animal. All of that comes into play when you're doing digital painting, right? Because every pixel decision is up to you. You decide how to frame it. You decide how to best communicate your intentions. And I just have my left hand, because I'm right-handed, I have my left hand hovering above the Option button. So I can just click it at any time to steal a color and throw that in. And no matter what your painting inspiration, your stylistic reference is, whether it's Picasso or Bob Ross, right, you're going to find your own ways of image making in this. Just like the way you doodle is different than the way other people doodle. And you try to work with that, not against that. There we go, it's getting closer. Get this arm. Now, if I can ever see my sketch lines, it means I'm just not covering that base painting enough. So these are the areas where I need to just take the time to get rid of the, fill in the space, like fill the coloring sheet. We often spend too much time around the nose and the eyes, because they're tricky, they're hard to get right, but just because they're a lot more interesting to look at. Okay. So then you can always check your drawing. I've made this shoulder too long. So as I look at the strap around her neck, you can also kind of build it in with negative shapes. And then I might just take this whole shoulder and transform it, bring all that color in. I can even do that with the shape painting underneath. There we go. And that's starting to look better. So in digital art, at any time, in digital painting, at any time you can make adjustments and just kind of warp things, move things. And in portraits, that can be especially helpful. And then you just go back to your brush tools, and you keep working. All right. Let's see, what else can I do? So I'm just trying to finish off this base painting, and then I got to do a base painting of the glasses because I want those. But you always do accessories on top of the base. You don't try to paint around them on your base painting. That's kind of disastrous. I'm going to go to my shape painting layer, and I'm just going to use my lasso, and I'm just going to carve away with my lasso that outside part of the shoulder. Delete. And delete. Nope, that's not work. So this is kind of framing it in from those loose strokes of the beginning. All right, save my work. And this is what I have so far. I turn off my references. I just can see it all on screen there. And you can see the sketch underneath, and you can see the rough painting that's on top of the sketch. And I still can do a lot more here. So maybe I need to focus on that a little bit. But it's nearly there. See,